at WrestleMania 25 and 26, you had Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels, and they called, I think it was WrestleMania 25, particularly the greatest wrestling match ever. And I can understand that for that generation, but when I heard that, I'm like, there's a lot of matches, to really look at, compare, saying I'm not one to sit there and make one match stand out as the all-time greatest match of all time, because wrestling does not go the 1990s and in the 1980s and 2000s, etc. It goes back many, 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 many years, and that's why it's hard for someone to sit there and say the all-time greatest match. I think the Michaels and Taker match was probably the best of that generation over that few years that was going on, and it carries on to this day. But this is, this match here, man. That's when I heard that. I was like, no. I was like, this is, you forgot Steamboat and Savage, and this time this match was talked about as one of the best of this generation. This match here, and it was like. So I heard that, I was like, you're forgetting a number of matches, but you're also forgetting Savage versus Steamboat, and that's one thing that I was like, yeah, but I've always been a big fan. This was always my favorite match of this WrestleMania, the best match of the card. Andre versus Hogan was not the best match. This was the best match. Hogan and Andre had a different story. That's what made it appealing, of course, to Slam, too. But this was the off-the-charts match that was talked about still to this day. I told you, and we talked about different episodes too, but obviously I told you, off the air a number of times. I met Ricky Steamboat at the St. Pete Clearwater Airport 5 years ago, and long story short, that's not really, it's not a long story, but cut to the chase. I brought that match up, and of course, he would probably expect that. He's like, man, I've seen that match. He's like, it's funny, people with some of your age would actually mention that, and so he was proud of that match as he should be, and of course he would be. And they were both. He was proud to work with Randy Savage, and it was just that match. Just he had plenty to say about, in short words, but yeah, so. I get a match at 9. Honestly, I just threw a number on there because I didn't care. I was like, that's not even 9. It's like more like a shit. I can go 11, man. But we only go to 10. But that match, it wasn't just the in ring. In ring was spot none, but it was more or less the psychology, the story, the feud leading up. Man, it was just off the charts. Go ahead now.
Yeah, I would say it's between a 9 and a 10 for me. And I always, when it comes to rating in terms of like what's the best match ever, the one way I like to look at it is just wrestling is all subjective. People have different things that they like to get out of matches. And you can have good all around matches and things like that, but it would always be hard to label a best ever because there's a lot of contenders. Like we mentioned Savage and Ricky, which honestly I agree is one of the best matches ever. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, which again I agree is one of the best matches ever.
Yeah,
but then you have matches that might not be great in terms of technical dealings, but because what was told throughout the match was really, really great, they should be ranked up there in consideration, like a Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair. Honestly, Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho too.
Oh yeah,
I actually think, and this is kind of weird because I know I'm a minority in this one. I actually think the Triple H versus Undertaker 2, the one where Shawn Michaels is the special guest referee, is actually better than Taker and HBK 2. Okay. But that's my opinion. It's all subjective. So,
yeah. And I think what made that match better is obviously such a great story, and also involving all three contenders that have a huge past, as well as have been inside Hell in a Cell, which that's also a big significance in that too.
Well, for me, okay, and I'm gonna highlight why I think it's better. I didn't think we'd get on this subject. Why I think it's better is yes, he has Shawn Michaels in there, but you also have Shawn Michaels fighting between, should I make Undertaker lose so my friend gets one up on him, or should I help put Triple H out of his misery? because you could see that kind of battle between the two of them.
Yeah.
Then he had Triple H that did the cross chop when he had no energy left as like a defiant move. And just and Undertaker finishes him off. And then after he pins him and HBK counts the pin, you have HBK crying in a corner. So
yeah, absolutely.
There was just, to me, there were so many variables, and I actually find that match to be better in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
I understand that. I understand what you mean. I agree with you. It's it's subjective, and there was I just when I said that time frame when that Michaels and Undertaker feud was back to back, both matches were great, off the charts. I heard the words, "This is the greatest match ever in wrestling history." I'm like, you can't really. I know you're selling it, but it's like you can't go off and say in wrestling history of one certain match of a certain generation is the absolute best ever. It's just yeah. So I was like, what came to my mind was like, hey man, you had Savage and Steamboat, and you had of course you have many other matches too, obviously.
Austin and Bret Hart.
Oh yeah,
I don't think it was WrestleMania, but either way,
there's WrestleMania 13.
Okay.
And Shamrock was the referee, but it was just, that's what I'm saying. Just like
Austin and Michaels.
Austin, that was not as great, honestly.
It wasn't as great, but it was significant. It's one of those.
It was significant, absolutely. And I say that, but also as a fan, I say that. You also go talk to those contenders; they're going to tell you that was just. It was terrible. What made it good was the psychology and the story. As far as the in-ring went, it wasn't. It could have been, but if Michael's head was a lot level, then could have been better. But anyways, you're saying
it's kind of like that Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels. That wasn't a technical masterpiece. It's just what happened in it.
Oh yeah.
For me, the Austin and Shawn Michaels was one, what happened in it, but also two, that started a very big deal for the WWF at the time.
Absolutely.
That became the focal point of the Attitude Era. This became the Austin Era. So because they did better business after, you have to give it a quality point for the significance that it led.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I think it's sold. I think it was one of his best-selling WrestleManias up until that point as well, because of Mike Tyson's involvement and because you had Austin versus DX essentially.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously for the buy rates obviously went up when he had Tyson involved, and at that time Tyson as a stardom was a lot bigger at that time too. Obviously there was a big crossover, so like you're saying, it's a technical match as far as the art to it wasn't. It was not saying. I don't think it was terrible, but it wasn't one of the what you would call it the all-time greats. But it was a very good psychology as far as like storytelling, and this is the situation we're in. I thought they I watched that match as a kid, and it was like as a kid it was like exciting, but you can see there's something a little bit missing there. It was obviously Michael's head was not on right. He'll tell it's not just me saying that. It's three contenders are also in that same telling the same
he was
story.
On the
drugs and everything, just mentally just wasn't, drugs were obviously the play in there, but just mentally just, it wasn't, he wasn't himself. And that obviously became his last match for a long time. But, that was a big significance there, obviously, as we talked about. Of course, the following year was significant, Austin Rock and so forth. But, it's just one of those things. What I've heard, the greatest wrestling match of all time. I'm not big even on looking at ball players as saying this certain game was the best of all time, or even barely certain athletes. What's the greatest pitcher of all? That's me. But as far as the wrestling business goes, I don't go along with the whole this certain one match. I don't even go along with a one certain wrestler being the absolute all-time greatest out of the whole pick. But that's just
Come on with athletes. Michael Jordan was the best basketball player.
Depends on who you ask now. It's just like I'm not gonna get argued about it. It's more or less. People, you ask a lot of old timers, not all of them, just a number of them that, look at older ball players and, different shooting styles. Who could shoot better. Not slam dunk and just I don't know. It's just different aspects that people look at. And, you look at different baseball players, like you said, football players. Who's
Tom Brady's the best.
Best. No, he's not.
I mean, you could make an argument for Tom Brady being one.
Best football players of all time?
Quarterbacks, for sure.
Quarterback, yeah, you can say he's one of the best, absolutely, by far. I don't look at it as one up like he's single-handedly the absolute all-time great. I just don't, but that's just me, But
no, that's probably Neon Dion.
No, he's the best without the ring.
We're gonna go down a rabbit hole here.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get back to WrestleMania 3.
Yeah, let's go back to one of Hart's Huckleberries with the Honky Tonk Man and against Jake Roberts with Alice Cooper. Okay, you might be able to explain this better to me than anyone else. Why was the Honky Tonk Man very popular in this era?
Here's my view. And my view's gonna be a lot different than other views too. So he was an attraction to the wrestling business. I mean, you look at everything about him. I mean, just the character at the time. Mike work. His in-ring was, depending on where you look at his in-ring, but he had good in-ring. How some characters can go over better than others,
right?
That's probably the most simplest way I can probably put it. It's just there's some characters that you think, how is that character getting over so well? And that's probably the most simplest, easiest way. But it's just he had something different. I mean, would you look at would you look at Tom Zink as more important than Honky Tonk Man? That's
no.
Character-wise.
No, but I don't know much about Zink.
Well, the thing
would you say Honky Tonk Man would be in that era as like Baron Corbin, like one of those guys that have just this nuclear heat on him?
He's better than Corbin, but yeah, I guess you want to put it to simple terms. That's you can go along with that, I guess.
Or like an Elias, but I actually think Elias is better than Honky Tonk. But
it's Elias is a special character, but I think in some ways, sometimes I feel like he's in the wrong spot. Sometimes I don't mean just on the card. I mean just the way the booking is. But
I agree. I think I'm going to use this as a Elias example. I think Elias actually deserves more. I honestly, he's a person I don't even think he's on the match card for WrestleMania, but he very well could be and should be. Baron Corbin. Okay, so here's my problem with Baron Corbin. I actually don't even think he's that bad in the ring. I just think
he's good in the ring. Absolutely.
I think the King Corbin thing is stupid. I think the fact that they've tried to pretend. Sorry, this is going to have to do with relevance to current booking. I don't understand why they had to pretend like Bobby Lashley actually believed Baron Corbin could take out Drew McIntyre. Because anyone that's watched WWE in the last 6 months knew that was not going to happen.
Well, who else are you going to put in that spot?
Honestly,
that's a great heel.
Honestly, that would have been better and made more sense with Sheamus. Sheamus got close to beating him at Fastlane.
I understand, but the storyline didn't match up. If you look at it the way anyways, we're going to get into current relevance of storylines. I mean, I understand where they put Baron Corbin at. Baron Corbin's not top of the card, unless you go, hey, he's a main event like a SmackDown or something. But they have him there as he's a guy that they can use for these situations. And I actually am a fan of the character King Corbin. I actually am. I'm fine with it. It gives him something to do, and it matches to me. And that's fine for me. As far as him taking out Drew McIntyre, that was just something. It's a spot they need to put him into. But obviously, is it believable? No. But that's it. And I'm not even going to believe that Sheamus could take out Drew McIntyre. Especially
I think he has a better chance. I think
he would have a better
chance. Yeah.
Not the storyline.
Well, I mean in the sense of because of their match with Fastlane. But when I saw Baron Corbin come out, I'm like, well, Drew's going to win this one. This is obvious.
So they always make it predictable, especially in this generation, or at least the
But
last number of generations.
It would be better if you